Hello and welcome. In this tutorial, I will show you how we can use passport authentication, that is the passport local authentication for our sign up and our login forms in our application. But before we do that, we just need to see what passport is, because in this tutorial we are using the passport local authentication. Now, passport is authentication middleware for Node.js. So it's a authentication middleware or package that can be used in our application for authenticating users when they sign up or when they log in to our application. And passport uses different authentication strategies as it is known. Now there are different strategies. We have the passport local strategy, which is what we're going to be using. The passport local strategy makes use of username and password fields, but we can use email and password or whatever field we want to use. But by default, passport local uses the username field and password field. Next, we have other strategies like passport Facebook, passport Google, Twitter. What this does is it allows the user to log in with either their Facebook, Google, Twitter account, LinkedIn, Steam, Dropbox, and the rest. But in this tutorial, we're just doing the passport local, where we're going to use the email and password. And also, to use these password strategies, there are different middlewares that needs to be installed. And since we are making use of Node.js, and it is required that you already have Node.js installed on your computer. And also we're going to be using Mongoose and MongoDB to store the user data in the database. But for this tutorial, I'll just use MongoDB on my local machine, since I already have MongoDB on my local machine. If you don't have it, you can install it, or you can go to MongoLab to use the cloud database. But for this tutorial, I'll use the MongoDB on my computer. So to use this, we need the Node.js, as I said, and we need other packages. Now the configuration. First, to use Passport, we need to install the required packages. Now Passport works with sessions. So we can use a package like express session. We're going to see how to use this session to store the data. Then also, as it is known, the Passport package, we're going to require that as well. Then we're going to use the connect flash to display flash messages to the user if maybe there's an error or a success. So we're going to display the error message or the success message to the user. Then we need to install the store, whereby we can save the user data. Because if we don't save the user data in the database, that is the user session in the database, whenever the page is refreshed, the user data will be destroyed, or the session will be destroyed, and the user will have to log in again and store the session. So for this, we need to use a connect Mongo store to save the user session in the database. So we're going to add all of these packages. Then also we are going to make use of these middlewares, like the app.use for session, the flash, passport initialize, passport session. So these are most of the things we are going to use. Now to get started, first we need to create a project. So we go into the folder where we want our project. For me, I have a folder called node_tutorials. I'm going to create a folder called passport or passports. Then I'm going to open this with my test editor. I'm going to be using bracket test editor. So I open this project with brackets. So I'll wait for this to open. Then what I'm going to do is we'll open the terminal or the command terminal here. I have the command terminal, and since I said I already have MongoDB installed on my computer, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to navigate to the folder or the drive where I have the MongoDB installed. So I exit these folders. Let me clear this. So I have it installed in the program files or program files. Then I have MongoDB, then server, then bin. So if you have it installed on Windows, or if you're installing it on Windows, you either check in your program files or to see the MongoDB installed. then you're going to use this to navigate to the bin folder. So inside the bin folder, once we are in the bin folder, clear this, then you type mongod to get the MongoDB server running. So once you get the MongoDB server running, let's see, let me clear this and type Mongo. Okay, so you just type Mongo and it's going to get the MongoDB shell running. So we have the MongoDB now, the shell running on our computer. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to navigate to this folder, this node tutorials, and also to this passport folder inside our project. So we open another terminal, then I will navigate to the folder. So documents, passports. So I've navigated now into this folder here. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to do passport init. We need to initialize the folder. So we are npm init. So we do npm init. So it's going to ask us for some information. So wait for it. It's going to ask us for some information. So if we like, we can just add them, or else we just continue tapping enter. So we wait for it to initialize and display the message. So the first message here is if we want to use the same name, I'll type enter. The version, description, you can give it a description. Passports, local strategy, authentication. Entry point, we can just leave that. Then type yes. So we have now initialized. Now after this initialization, what it does is it creates a package.json file. So if we go back here and we refresh this, we should see a package.json file. So here all our dependencies that are going to be installed, they are going to be added inside this package.json. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create a server.js file or app.js. In some application they use app.js, but here I'm just going to use server.js. So I create a new file in the root directory and I call it server.js. So here we're going to have our required middleware or packages. So first thing is we install the packages. The first one is we're going to do npm install express. Then we need to add the save flag, because if we don't add the save flag, it's not going to install this express in our package.json. That is, it's not going to install it inside our project. Then we'll have to do that manually. So we add this save flag, then we type in enter. It's going to install express in our project. So we install this. So we wait for it to install. So okay, right there we can see it has installed the express package. Let me clear this. If we go to our package.json, now we can see we have the express dependency installed inside our package.json, and we have it in our project. If you refresh the root directory, we're going to see a node module. So this is where all our packages will be installed, and we'll have the dependencies in the package.json file. Now the next thing we need to do, we have some other dependent or packages we want to install. So we are going to add package like we'll say npm install. We add cookie parser. Now this cookie parser is going to allow us save cookies in the browser. So we do cookie parser express session. Also we are going to install body parser. Then we're going to install the templating engine. The templating engine we are going to make use of is EJS. So we are going to install that as well. So we'll do EJS. And we can just add mongoose as well. So we are installing cookie parser, express session, body parser, EJS, mongoose. Then let's save. Every other package that we need, we're going to install them as well. So we have all of these packages. If we, after they install successfully, we're going to see them inside our package.json file. So we wait for it to install. So we've installed all of the packages. So we go back here. Inside the package.json, we can see the dependencies. Now the next thing is we need to require all of this inside our server.js. So the first thing is we create a variable we call express, and so you require express. Then the next thing is we require the other packages like body parser, cookie parser. First we add parts. This is an inbuilt package, so we don't need to install it, which is parts. It's going to allow us add the parts or the different parts to our project. So we just include these parts. Then create a variable and we'll call it cookie parser. Require cookie parser. Then variable, we add the body parser as well. Body parser. Then let's check what else. Okay, EJS, express session, mongoose. So we can add variable express, or we can call it session, equals to require express session. Then okay, let's just have all of this first. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to add the middleware for this. Now since we are going to be using the EJS templating engine, that is our view engine, so we need to use the view engine and set the EJS. But first we create another variable which is going to be an instance of the express variable we created. So we say express. So this variable app is an instance of the express variable now, or the express method. Now the next thing we use app.set. We need to set the view engine. So we say view engine and we use EJS because we are going to be making use of EJS. Now the next thing is we set the body parser dot app.use. Then it's going to be body parser, which is this one here, the variable we have, dot URL encoded, dot URL encoded. So this body parser will allow us to get values from our forms or from the body of our pages or our views. So we're using this body parser. Without this, it's going to be difficult for us to get values from the input form or values from the body of our page or any of our views. So URL encoded. Then we're going to add extended, set it to true. Then another thing we need is app.use, then body parser .json. So this will allow JSON data to be passed. So we are adding body parser. Then one other thing we need to do is we are going to create a folder called public. There inside the folder we're going to have all of our static files, like our images if we're going to have images, also CSS files, JavaScript files. So we're going to create a static middleware. So we use app.use, then we say express.static. Then we add public. So in the root directory, let's just create a folder and call it public. Okay, we have that now. So we have all of this now. and the view engine. Now what we also need to do, let's just try to create or add our connection. So to add the connection, we do app.listen. Then the port we are going to be making use of here is port 3000. Then we create the function, the callback, which is an anonymous function. Then inside we could just do console.log, say listening on port 3000. So we have this now. Let's check that this is working. So we'll go to our console and we'll type node server.js. Now we can see it's displaying what we have in the console, which says listening on port 3000. Okay, that is working fine. So we can cancel that and we go back here. Now what we want to do next is, now go back to our package.json. We have mongoose, so let's require the mongoose. So we say variable mongoose equals to require mongoose. Now that we have this, what we need to do, since I said we're going to make use of MongoDB on our local machine, I already have it installed. You can go ahead and install MongoDB on your machine and you navigate as we did earlier. So now we need to create the database. To create the database, we say mongoose.connect. Since we are using localhost, what we're going to do is we just type mongodb : /localhost/ then we can give it a name, passport local. So this is going to be the name of our database, passport local. So we have this now. Next is we add the passport package we install. So we go down here, do npm install passports, and we use the save flag. So this is going to install passports on inside our project. We're having an error. Okay, I think I know the reason why we're having this error. If we go back to our passport.js or the package.json file, now the reason is we have our project name as passport, and we are trying also to install a package or a dependency named passport. So I think package.json or it's not, or npm doesn't want to allow that. All we need to do, we could just rename this to something passport local. So we give our project passport local. So let's go back and install passports. So we clear this, we do npm install passport save. So we are wait for this to install, and it's going to install properly now. Here we see that we've installed passports on our machine. So we go back to the package.json, we can see we have passports. So make sure that the name is different from the package or any of the package that you are trying to install. After doing this, we need to require passports here. So we come down here and we do variable passports equals to require passports. Then another dependency, as I said earlier, we need to install is the connect mongo that will allow us save our sessions in the database. So we go and install connect mongo, npm install connect mongo. So we install this, it will allow us to save our sessions in the variable. So when the user refreshes the page, the sessions will not be destroyed. Now, then we come down here, we can call this mongo store equal require connect mongo. Then this takes a function, we need to pass the session to it. So we pass the session like this. So for the connect mongo, it requires the session. So we pass the session as a function to this connect Mongo. So we have this, we need to add the middleware. Now note, the session middleware needs to be called before we initialize passport. So if we initialize the passport first before calling the session, it's going to give an error, it's not going to work. So we need to add the session middleware before initializing passport. So first we add the cookie parser. So say cookie parser. Then we do app.use. We add the session. So to add the session, we add inside the session, we add this object. The first thing is we add the secret. This is just going to be a secret key. You can call it whatever you want. So my secret session key. Then we need to add two things. I like everything to be aligned. First is receive. We want to set it to true. So what this will do is, even if the session is not changed, we want it to be saved in the database. So we set it to true. Then we do save on initialize or initialized. We set it to true as well. It does the same as the receive. If the session is not changed, we want it to be saved in the database as well. Then we need to call this Mongo store. We do that by adding the key store. We add store and we set it equal to new Mongo store. We set it equal to new Mongo store. Then inside we can do mongoose connection. Then we pass in the mongoose connect or mongoose.connection. Mongoose.connection. So now with this we have a session store, and all of our sessions will be saved inside the database. We don't need to worry about the session being destroyed when the user refreshes the page. So here we have the secrets, the receive and the save on initialized. When the user does not save the session, or if the session is not changed, we want the session to be saved in the database. And we have the store. So this store will allow us to save our session in the database. So we have all of this now. Now the next thing is to add the initialize passport. So we'll do passport.use or app.use. Then we'll do passport.initialize. We'll do passport.initialize. Then the next one is app.use passport.session. So now with this we have the passports initialized and the passport session inside our server.js. We've now added the required middleware and the packages as well. So now the next thing we want to do is we're going to create some folders. Call the first folder, I will call it models. The next one is going to be views. And the last one, I'll just like to call it controllers or routes, whichever one. I'll call it controllers. So I have the controllers, the models, and the views. Now inside the model or the views, we can create, since we are going to be using sign up and login, and we're using the EJS, I'll create a file and I call it signup.ejs and also login.ejs. Here basically we are not making use of index, but if you want you can add the index file, but here we're not making use of index. So it's going to just have the login.ejs and signup.ejs, or if you want, let's add the index.ejs, and we have all of these inside the root directory. Now the next thing is, inside our public folder we can create a folder called CSS. Then after doing this, what we want to do now next is we want to create the signup.ejs. We go to the signup.ejs. I already have the files or the code, I will just copy and paste. So I'll paste the code inside. Okay, so as we can see, what we have here is the head, and inside the head we just have this title that says passport local strategy. Then here I added the bootstrap link because we're going to use bootstrap for styling. Then also I have a div with class container and style margin bottom with 100 pixels. We have this div and h2 tag that says sign up. Then also this div with class row and class sign up. This is our own custom CSS. We're going to add the CSS style. Then we have a form with action, sign up, and method post. So the action is sign up and the method is post. Then inside we have this input fields, full name, email, and password. That is what we're only using: the email, the full name, the email, and the password. Then also in the div with class row form group, we have another CSS class input group. We're going to use this to add style to the input field. So we have all of these now. If we go to our CSS file, let's create a new file and call it custom.css. Then here, to use this custom.css, we just add the link. So we link the file and the href. Now because we've already declared our static folder here, express.static, as public, when calling any folder or file inside this public folder, we don't need to add this public. So we just go directly and call the folder or the file. So here we're just going to add css/custom.css. So we just have this since we already declared this public. Now the next thing is we can just here, let's type something and say h1 in this page. Then for the CSS, because we have some CSS classes like reg_message, inputs_group, sign up, I'll copy and paste the CSS as well. So I'll paste the CSS here. Okay, so we'll go through it here. For this class sign up, we're setting the text align property to be centered, to have a width of 50%, the height auto, and the margin auto. So the form is going to be at the center. That is this div with class row and sign up, it's going to be at the center. Then the inputs_group. For the inputs_group, so we're using this input_group to get access to the input field. That is inside this div with class input_group, we want to add styles to this input field. That is why we have .input_group input. We set the height to 50 pixels, the font size, the margin, the padding, and the border. And also for the class with reg_message, we have the CSS style of width, height, and margin. So if we go back to the sign up, and before we can test this out, we need to add the controller, because if we don't add the routes inside the controller, we will not be able to access this index file, the login, or the sign up. So inside our controllers folder, we create a new file and we can call it user.js. Inside the controllers folder, we create a file and we call it user.js. Now what we want to do first is we are going to require some packages. So the first thing is we require express. So say variable express equal to require express. Then also we make use of the express route method. So we'll say variable and we call it router equals to express.router. So we're having access to this router to make use of it inside our controller or our routes folder. Then the next thing is we're also going to require passport because we're making use of passport. So variable passport equal to require passport. Okay, we have these dependencies. Now we need to add the routes. the first route that we want to add is the route for the index.js, because when we go to our browser, that is the first page that we're going to be taken to. So we'll say router.get, and note that for the HTTP request has about 4 main routes: the get, post, put, and delete. So those are the routes. To get, basically gets a route or gets information from the database, while post is used to send information. Then the put is used to update. Then delete, as it's the name, is used to delete data. So to get the index.js route, we use the get request or the get route. So we say router.get, then we pass in the index. So here we don't need to add index. By default, the slash, what it does is it goes to the views and gets the index file. Then we pass in the callback, and inside the callback we use request response. So we say res.render, and we just pass index. So inside the index, this is the first route. So we have these routes now. The next thing we need to do is we export this route. So say modules.export equal to router, because without this, without exporting this, we cannot use this outside of this controller. So we need to add modules.export equal to router, because we are making use of this router. If you check some other tutorials, what they do is they just use module.export equal to function, and they pass in a variable or a parameter called app. Then once this controller or this user.js is called inside this server.js file, then we'll make use of this app variable. But here what I'm doing is I'm just creating it, then using this router instead of just passing in the app, then making use of this app variable. So we have this, then we export. Now the next thing, let's go to our console, then try this out to see the index.js file. But before we do that, we need to require this user.js file inside our server.js. So we can come here and we can say variable user equal to require, then controller or controllers slash user. So we require the file. Then the next thing is we can come down here, then add the middleware. I'll say app.use or app.use, then say user. So with this, we've required the user.js file inside the controllers folder. So we'll say variable user equals to require this, then we come down here, app.use. Now, as you can see, we have some errors here. So first, initialize. We need to get that correctly. Initialize. Then here also uninitialized. We need to change that. Uninitialized. No. Initialized. Yeah, I think I got it correctly now. So save uninitialized. We save this. We've required this user.js file. Now let's go to our console and run the node server.js. So go to our console and type node server.js. But if you are using app.js, you just say node app.js. So enter, then we see listening on port 3000. So we go to our browser, open a new tab, and we'll say localhost colon 3000. And now you can see we have the index page. If we try to go to the sign up or the login, we're going to get an error because we don't have the routes here. We don't have the route. So if we add the routes for sign up, so let's say router.get and sign up. So function request response, then res.render. We say sign up. Now we are making this res.render is made possible due to this view engine that we are making use of, the views. So we are setting the view engine to EJS, and it's allowing us to make use of this res.render. So it's going to render the sign up file inside the root directory of the views folder. So we have the sign up. Now let's go ahead. We stop and restart the server. Restart the server. So CLS to clear. Node server. Okay, we go back to our browser. We refresh this, then /sign up. Now we can see how the sign up form looks here because of the CSS that we added. We have the sign up here. I'm not adding any navbar or whatever, but we have the sign up here. We can just add a link to take us to the index page or the login page, but we have this. We can just change what we have inside this test. So we go back to the sign up.ejs. For the placeholder, we can say full name, email, and password. So we go back, we refresh. Now you notice that I did not have to restart the server. If you make any change inside any view folder or any view file, you don't need to restart the server. But if you make any change to maybe the models or the controllers folder or inside the server.js, you need to restart the server. So as you can see, we have the sign up. From here we can go back to the index page. So we have this now working. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create the model. So that we need to save this data inside the database. Inside the models folder, we create a new file and we call it user.js. Yeah, we call it user.js. So since we are using Mongoose, we are going to create a schema using Mongoose. So the first thing is we require Mongoose, because to require Mongoose. Now we create a variable, we can call it user schema. I'll set it equal to mongoose dot schema, the schema with capital S. Then inside we are going to pass in, because we are creating an object, then we're going to pass the key and the value. So the first thing is full name, and we're setting the type to string. Then the email, setting the type as well to string. Then the password type, and we'll set it to string. So now with this, we've created the schema, and these are the fields that's going to be inside the collection. But what we need to do is we need to create the model. To create the model for this schema, we use module.exports equal to mongoose.model. Then we give the model a name and we call it user. You can call it whatever model you want. You can call it user login or user whatever. Then we pass in user schema. So now we have the schema and the model. So once a new data is created, it's going to create this model, and all of the data will be saved inside this user model. But note, later on we're going to create a method that will allow us to encrypt this password, because if we create a new user, it's just going to add the user's password as a plain text, but we want it to be encrypted. We're going to do that later. So we've created the model. The next thing we need to do is inside the user.js, we require the model. But before that, let's create a folder, and we call it config. So we can create a folder, call it config. Then inside the folder, we create a new file and call it passports.js. So now, right now, what we want to do is we want to add the passport local configuration inside this folder passport.js. But before we do that, let's go to the server.js and we add or require this file. So here we can just come down here and say require config/passport. So we have this passport.js file inside our server.js. So now inside this passport.js, we are going to add the code for our login and our sign up authentication. So the first thing is we require passports. So variable passports equal to require passports. Then, as I said earlier, we are using the passport local strategy, which will allow us to use email and password for login. So we say variable and call it local strategy equal to, but before then, let's install the passport local strategy. So we come here, we stop the server. So we do npm install passports local -- save. So npm install passport local -- save. So it's going to install the local strategy inside our project. So wait for it to install. And let's just wait a little. I'll pause this video and just wait for it to install. Okay, now we have the passport local installed. So we create a variable, we say local variable local strategy equal to require passport local dot, then we need to add the strategy dot strategy. So this will allow us to make use of the passport local strategy. Now we need to also require the user model. This model we created here, this file, we need to require it here. So it's a variable user equals to require models/user. If you notice, we are not adding the extension, the .js extension. We don't need it because it will go into the model and make use of this user .js file. So we don't need to add the extension. Now to get started with the passports, the first thing we need to do is we need to serialize and deserialize. What the serialize method does is it gets the user's ID and saves it in the session. Then the deserialize is with that user's ID, it's going to get the user's information and save it inside a variable called user. So the first is we say passport dot serialize. Then inside we are going to pass in the function which will take user and done. So passport dot serialize user, not just serialize but serialize user. So inside we are going to pass the method done, which will take in null and user.id. So here what this does is it's going to take the user's ID and save the user's ID in the session. That's why we are passing user.id. So the user's ID, once the user is able to log in or sign up or log in successfully, then it's going to save the user's ID inside the session with this user.id. Then the next thing is we say passport dot deserialize user. Now this deserialized user, on the other hand, it's going to take in the function is going to take in the ID and done method. So what this is going to do is once the user logs in, the data is, or the ID is saved in the database, then it's going to go to the database and fetch the user's data based on the ID saved in the session. So to do that, we are going to make use of this user variable for the model, then find that particular user's data. To do that, we say user dot find by ID. Oh, sorry. So here we say user dot find by ID. Now this user dot find by ID is a mongoose method. So we're going to find the user's data based on the ID, and we're going to pass this ID we have here, because this is the ID that is saved in the database or in the session. So we say user.id find by ID, then we pass in the ID, then we pass in the callback. Then inside the callback we pass the error and the user. So what this does is, if there's an error, it's going to be saved inside this value, but if there's no error, the user data is going to be saved here. So if the ID is found, the data or the results will be saved here. Then we pass in done with error and user. So the passport.deserialized user, which takes in the anonymous function with ID and done, is going to find the user data by the ID which is saved in the session. If there's an error, the user data will be, the error will be saved inside this variable. Or if there's no error, then the user data or the results will be saved inside this user variable. Then we're going to return this done method with error and user. So we've created the passport.serialized user and the deserialized user. Now the next thing is to use the passport middleware to create the sign up and the login. So first we say passport.use. Passport.use, then we give it a name, we call it local sign up or local.signup. I can call it local.signup. Then we create a new instance of this local strategy. So we say new local strategy. Now, so passport.use, we give the name local.strategy, then we create a new instance, new local strategy. Now inside, by default, passport uses the username field and the password field. So we say username field, but instead of putting username, because we don't have username, we just add email. Then password field, then we pass in the password. Then one last thing we need to pass is pass request to callback, and we set it to true. So what this does is, it's going to pass every data into the callback. Whatever data or whatever value or whatever information we're having is going to pass it into the callback. So we have this now. We save. So now we pass in the callback function. So say function, we pass request, email, and we can pass in the password and done. So we're passing the callback function that takes in the request, the email, the password, and done. Here what we want to do is we want to check if the user data already exists in the database. So we do that by saying user.find1. So we want to find one user. We pass in the object that takes in the email and this email. So this object is going to check in the database if the email in the database exists. This email is the email in the database, while this email is the one we are passing here, which is the email the user is imputing. So it's going to check, go to the user database, that is the user collection, then try to check if the user's email already exists. So we say, then the next thing we pass in a callback function. Then inside the callback function we pass error and user. So if there's an error, we return done with error. That is if there's an error. But if the user data already exists, if user, that is when user signing up, if the email already exists, because it's going to check if the email exists and it's going to return a result. So if the result exists, then that is if user, we're going to say return done, then null and false. Here we can just pass in a message that we're going to display to the user, but we'll just leave it for now. When we install the Connect Flash, then we're going to display the error message. For now, let's just leave it this way. So if the user email already exists in the database, we return done with null and false. But if not, we can just create a new user. So if the user's email does not exist, then we're going to create a new user. To create a new user, we say variable new user equal to new user. Then here, so we say new user dot full name equal to. Now this is where we're going to make use of this body parser that we added here, this body parser. So it's going to allow us get the user data from the body of the signup.egs file. To do that, if we go to our signup.egs, we can see here that we added a name attribute. So without this name attribute, we can't get the value from this input field. So we added this name attribute. For the full name, the name attribute is name, the name for the email is email, and for password. So we're going to make use of that. To do that, we say request dot body dot name. So request dot body dot name. That is for the full name. The new user dot email is going to be request dot body dot email. Then new user dot password. Now for this case, if we just do request dot body dot password, then whatever password the user enters, that is how it's going to be saved in the database. But we don't want it that way. What we want is we want the data or the password to be encrypted. So to do that, we first of all install a package called bcrypt node.js. So that will allow us to encrypt our password. So we do npm install bcrypt /node.js .save. So npm install bcrypt -node.js --save. So we install this package. Then if we go to our models, we are going to make use of that inside our models. That is the user.js. So we check if it's installed. Okay, we have the package installed now. We go to our package.json. Here we can see bcrypt node.js. Now inside here we require the file. So we say variable bcrypt equal to require bcrypt node.js. Now having installed this, we have access now to some methods we can make use of. So to add a function inside our model, inside Mongoose model, we use the name of the schema. So we say user schema, user schema. So change this, user schema dot methods dot, we can call it encrypt password, which is equal to function, and the function is going to take in the password. So with this, then we are going to return bcrypt dot hash sync. Now these methods are from the bcrypt package that we installed, so we're having access to the method. So we say bcrypt dot hash sync. Then the hash sync method takes in the password, which is this password, which is going to be the password the user will enter. So whenever we call this method, we're going to add the password. So we say password, then we use another method, which is bcrypt dot gen salt sync. So this is going to be the salt because we'll set it to 10. Now this method, what it's going to do is it's going to add the encryption. It's going to add the encryption to the password that the user is adding, and we're setting the length to 10. Then also we just pass in null. That's it. So with this, whenever we call this password and pass in the user password, based on this bcrypt package, is going to encrypt the user's password. So we have this. The next thing is we can just copy this, then go to our passport.js. Here we pass in new user dot encrypt password. So now the user's password is not just going to enter as a plain text, but rather as an encrypted password. We can change this to password, get the correct, change this to password. So we have this now. The next thing is, since we've already added, the next thing we need to save the user data in the database. So we say new user dot save. We pass in a function, it takes in error. Then inside the function we can say if error, we can just return done. It's error. Else if there's no error, we say return done, and it's going to take in null, and this time it's going to take user or new user. That is the new user data that we created. We're going to pass that into this variable. So with this now, we've added the functionality for the local sign up. So if we go back, we required the mongoose or the passports package, the passport local, then the user model. Then we serialized and deserialized the user. Then here we use this middleware local.signup, the new local strategy. So here we are checking if the user email already exists. If it does, we pass this message. We're going to display a message to the user. But if it's not found, then we create a new user, encrypting the password and saving the data to the database. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to make use of this inside the controller. Let's copy this. Then inside the controller, we just pass this. We require the user model. Now here, as you can see, we've already used the get method or the route for the sign up. Now the next thing is the route is going to be for the post, route.post, because we need to send the user data to the database. So to do that, so we pass in the sign up. Now instead of passing just an anonymous function, we pass passport.authenticate. This is from passport. Then inside we're going to pass in the name we added here, which is local.signup. So we say local.signup. Then we pass in the object. Now inside we are going to use some key value pairs made available through passports. The first is success redirect. So if the user sign up is successful, where do we redirect them to? So for now, we'll just redirect them back to the sign up page. Then the next one is failure redirect. Failure redirect, same, we take them so we can display the error message. Then the next one is failure flash. We set it to true. So this will allow us to make use of flash messages. So here we are using the post request, and inside we're passing the passport.authenticate. We're authenticating the local.signup using this method success redirect, failure redirect, and the failure flash. So with this now, we've added the route for the sign up. Now to test that out, let's go back and, or we can just, what we need to do, let's create a new file, call it profile. Then we add the route for the profile. So we say profile and also profile. So we have this route. We go to our views, we create profile dot EJS. So inside this profile dot EJS, so when the user sign up is successful, we redirect them to this page. We can pass in the user, because right now, once the user sign up is successful, here this will be made available globally, so we can make use of this user value here, which has all the user data saved inside. So here we can just come here and say user request dot user. So we're passing this object with the key as user. This is just a key we're adding. You can use any key, but for the value we are using request dot user. This user here is the one we have here that is being passed, or that is being saved here. So inside the controller we are passing this. Then if we go to our profile.ejs, we can just pass in user dot name or user dot full name. H2. So we pass in the user dot full name. So if the sign up is successful, we are going to see the user's full name here. So to test this, let's go restart our server. Okay, we do node server.js. So we have this now. Let's go to our browser. We refresh the page and let's go to the sign up. Okay, full name, let's give Martin Lawrence. So Martin at yahoo.com, password Lawrence. So if we click sign up, now we can see that the sign up is successful. The user has been successfully signed up and taken to the profile page, and here we can see the user's full name as we have it here. We have the user's full name. So what we did here was, after the sign up was successful, we are saving the user data inside this user variable from passport. Then we pass in this object with key and value. Then inside the profile.ejs, we are calling this key. So we have the key here, and to get the value, we say user.fullname. So if we do a console.log, and we pass in request.user. So on the console, let's stop and refresh. Now, if we come back here and refresh this page, go back to the console. Now you can see the user data here. We have the ID. This ID is created by Mongoose when the data is saved in the database. Then we have the password. As we can see, the password is not just a plain text, but rather an encrypted password. We have the email as martin@yahoo.com, then the full name as Martin Lawrence. Now, to get access to any of these keys, we use, as we did here, we say user, which is this user here, dot the name of the key we want to get. So for the full name, we do user.fullname. If you want to get the email, you say user.email. But we don't need the password because we don't need to display the password. Same goes with the ID. If you want to get the ID, we say user._ID. Now we have this. Now we need to see this saved inside the database. Now we go here, clear this with Ctrl L. We do show DBS. To see all the databases, we do show DBS. Then here we can see we have our database passport local here. Passport local. To make use of this passport local, you say use passport local, because this was the name we gave it here. If you come back here inside our server, here we give it the name passport local. If you are using MongoLab, that is the cloud database, you do the same thing, but in that case, you're just going to pass in the username and the password that was given to you or that you created. So now we've switched to the passport local. We clear. So to see, we can say db dot or show collections. Now, as we can see, we have the users collection, this which we created, and also the sessions. Now, to see what we have inside the users, we do db.users.find. Then to make it look very nice, the result that will be returned, we just add .pretty. We have this method .pretty, and you enter. So you can see we have the ID, which is object ID, the password, the email, and the full name. So we can see as we have here. Then let's clear. For sessions, we do db.sessions.find.pretty. Same, we can see that the user's data is saved in the database by passports. So we see passports, then saves the user database, but instead it's using the user's ID. This is the user's ID we have here. Saved the user's ID in the database. Then we have some cookie. This is going to be set in the browser. So as you can see, now, had it been we did not include this Mongo store here that we have, then this data would not be saved inside the database. This data will not be saved in the database. So whenever we refresh the page, it's just going to destroy the session, the user session. So if we go back here and we see, we still have the values here. Just to okay, so we can see that it's working fine. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to do the same for the local, for the login. So for login, let's just copy all that we have here. We are going to change a few things for the login. So we change this to local login. So we're passing the same, the username field, the password field, pass request to callback, set it to true. Then for the function or the callback, we pass the request, the email, the password, and the done. Here also in this case, what we want to do, we want to check if the user's email or if the user exists. We are using the email. So the user cannot log in if the email does not exist. So we check if the email exists. We pass in the function, the callback. If there's an error, it's going to be saved in this value. If there's no error, the result will be saved here. So as we did earlier, if there's an error, we return the error else. Now in this case, we are not doing if user exists, but here we are saying if user does not exist. So since login, user cannot log in if it doesn't have data in the database. So if user does not exist, then we return done, then with null and false. Then the next one is we are not creating any new user. So we take all of these out. But now in this case, what we want to do, we want to check if the password the user is going to impute will be the same as the password in the database. Now to do that, we create a new method inside the model. So create a new method inside the model. We go to our user model. Then here in this case, we are going to use user schema dot methods dot valid password. So the methods we are going to use inside here, they're already made available through this bcrypt node.js. So we'll say function, and it's going to take in the password. So what we want to do now is return bcrypt dot, in this case we are using compare sync. This method is made available through bcrypt node.js, and it's going to take in the password, which is this, and also the password from the database. And to do that, we use this dot password. So the comparison that's going to be done is going to be done between the password the user inputs and the password in the database. So it's going to return this if there's a match. So compare sync password, then this dot password. So this password here is what the user is going to input, while this is the one from the database. So now the next thing is to call this function valid password. So we'll go back to passports. Then here we're going to say if it's not user dot valid password, and we're passing the request dot body dot password. So if it's not user dot valid password, that is the user password is not equal to the password in the database, then we are going to return done with null and false. As I said earlier, we're going to add a flash message later. But otherwise, if there's no error, if the user password matches and the user exists, then we'll just say return done. This time null and the user. So it's going to return this user, because if the email is found, then all of the user data will be saved here. So if everything is okay, then we return done with null and the user data. So this is for the local.login. It's just as simple as this. The next thing we need to do, as we did for the sign up, we go to the controllers. First, we create the routes. Create the route for login. Then the next thing is we are going to pass in this as well. So it's going to be login instead. So if here we change to login. If the login is successful, we go to the profile page. If there's failure, we go back to the login page, and we're going to display the flash message. So this is how we use the local.login. So let's go back to our views. Then we have the login.ejs. So for the login.ejs, I will just copy and paste the code we have. So I'll paste the code here. So it's all the same thing as we did earlier. So here instead is going to be /login. So the action is login and the method is post. We are logging in with the email and the password. Then we have the button. We have the bootstrap. Here we can just copy the CSS file and add it here. We add the CSS file and we add it here. So now let's stop our server. We clear, then we do node server.js. Okay, we are having an error here that says unexpected token. So let's go back to passport.js. Okay. Okay, it's supposed to. Okay, we have this now. Okay, now we have it working. We go to our browser. We can go back to the index page. From the index page, we go to login. Now we can see the login. Let's change this to just email and password. Okay, so we refresh this. Now email and password. So we need to log in with the user's email, and the email we added was martin@yahoo.com. So Martin, so you can see there's an error somewhere. Here it says password key, valid password. There's a mistake. Let's just go inside our model. Inside our model. So now we can see that the login was successful. The user has been taken to the page, that is the profile page with their email. We can decide to add, if we go to our profile, we can decide to add email to it. So refresh. Here we can see the email. So we can see that the login is successful, but also there's something that we need to do. As you can see, if we just go take this off, and from here we go to profile, we can see that we can go to the profile page just by typing the route in the address bar. So what we need to do is we need to add a method that will allow the user, if the user is not logged in, it will just redirect the user. So let's go ahead. Inside our controller, here at the bottom, we can add a function. So this function we enable the user to be redirected if they are not logged in. So we'll say it's logged in. Now this is logged in. Since we already have Passport working fine, Passport exposes us to a method called isAuthenticated. So we say if request, first we need to pass request, response, and next. So we are passing this new value here. So we say if request dot is authenticated, if it's authenticated, then return next. So what this does is, if the user is logged in, then we need to go to the next route if the user is logged in. But if the user is not logged in and the user tries to access a route, then we say res.redirect, where we want to take the user to the login page. So function if request.is authenticated, return next. So if the user is logged in, then the user should be taken to the next route. But or else if the user is not logged in and the user tries to access the route where we are going to add this function, then the user will be redirected to the login page. Also, we need to create a logout route. So we can just copy this out and call this logout. Then we say request.logout. So this also is made available through Passport. Then once the user logs out, we redirect them to the index page. So we have this route now. We need to add the link. We can go to our profile page and let's just add the link. So we call this logout. So it's just going to be logout. We don't need to create a file for it. Just add the link. So we have this now. Then if we go back and refresh, we refresh the page, You can see the logout. We click on it. Now you can see it has taken us back to the index page. So if we go to the login and we log in with the user's data now, and also we can log out. We can see that the login and the logout functionality, it's working. So the next thing is we want to make sure that once the user is logged out, the user cannot go to the profile page without logging in. So we'll go to our project here. This function we created is logged in. We'll just copy it and place here after the route for the profile, then before the callback function. We just add and we separate with commas. So what this is going to do is, if the user is not logged in, the user cannot go to this profile page. So we have this now. Let's restart the server. Then refresh this page. Then let's try to go to the profile page. As you can see, it redirected us back to the login page. So if the user is logged in, now it took us to the profile page. If we log out and we try to access the page, it's going to redirect us back. So we can see that the login at the redirect functionality, that is the middleware we created for the redirection, it's working fine. Now one last thing that we need to do is we need to add a Flash package that will enable us display Flash messages. So first, what we want to do is we want to make use of a package called express flash. So let's first install. So we do npm install express flash. So we install this. Okay, we have it now. Now let's require it inside our server.js. So inside the server.js, you can come down here and we create a variable called flash equal to require express flash. We've required that we need to add the middleware. We can do that by just simply app.use flash. So we have this now. The next thing we need to do is to make use of this. We're going to do that inside our config or the passport.js. Let's see if we say here, we can just say that is if the user data does not exist, if the user email does not exist, we just do require dot flash. We can say login error. Then we pass in the message that says user email not found. So we have this now. We have saved this in the flash. Then we go to our controller. Inside our controller, let's go to the profile page or the profile route. Then inside the profile route, we can pass login error and do require dot flash login error. So we have this now, the error flash message stored inside this key. So inside our profile.ejs or inside our, let's see, the login.ejs. Sorry, let's put this in the login.ejs. Take this out, then add this in the login.ejs. So inside the login.ejs, we're going to add this key. So we go here. We want the error message to be displayed here. Let's just place it here. So we can say span, or instead let's just take it out. We can add it here, a span tag, then we call login error. So we have this now. This login error is what we have here, which is the key we have here, and we can only get this error if the user's data is not found. So it's going to display user email not found. So let's go back now. Let's go restart the server. Then refresh the login page. Let's try to log in with user data that does not exist. I'll click login. Here we can see that it says user email not found. So we can see that the flash message is working, showing the user the data or the error message. We can just go ahead to change this to user data not found, or we can just pass user email not found. Then here as well, call this password, user password is incorrect. So user password is incorrect. So go to our controller, then copy this, or you can just make it much more easier. Login underscore error equal to. So here you just pass this, then password error. Here's going to be password error. So we can say password error, and the value is password error. So we'll do the same thing here. So this is going to be password error. So let's refresh. Refresh the page. And we try to log in. Here, okay, it says user email. Let's see why the other message is not shown. Oh, okay, password error. Require.flash. Okay, let's just go back and try it again. So we stop the server and restart. Okay, let's refresh this page. Let's type in the correct email and a wrong password. Okay, here we can see now it says user password is incorrect. So we can see that the flash messages are working fine. So you can just style this whichever way you want. Instead of using span tag, you could decide to use h3 and h3. Now we need to do the same for the sign up. Let's just see where we need to add. Yeah, we can just add a message here to the user saying call it message error. We can see user already exists. So we're going to call this inside our controller. We pass in the object, and we can say what did I call it here? Message error. So what I just need to do is just call this message. So copy one of these and add to the sign up. Then instead here is going to be message. So let's restart our server. And we go back. Let's go to the sign up. Okay, so let's try to add a user's email that already exists. Now we can see that the message says user already exists because we already have the email in the database. So now we can see that the passport local strategy for the sign up and the login works fine, and also the authentication and as well the flash messages are working. So with this, we've been able to use the passport local strategy to create the authentication for sign up and login. Also, we can, instead of going through all of this long process, writing all of these codes, there is a simpler way that this can be done, and it can be done using passport local mongoose. So this allows us, and it takes away all of the stress of writing this much code. What we just need to do for the passport local mongoose is just to make use of the methods and functions, and it will help us do the authentication instead of writing all of this from scratch. So we've done for this in this video. In a later lecture, I'll show you how to use the passport local mongoose to create this same authentication for sign up and login. And also there are other authentications or strategies that we can use, like Facebook, Google+, Gmail, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the rest. So we've done that for the local strategy, and I hope you found this interesting. And also you can sign up to my channel to get more videos and more tutorials, not just only on Node.js but other languages as well, like PHP and MySQL. So I'll see you in a later video.